Hello and welcome to More Than a Game, a podcast about the A-League, Premier League and more. Melbourne might have returned to lockdown this week, but the world of football hasn't been stuck inside binging Netflix. It's been a pretty stacked week with ridiculous shit happening both in Australia and around the world. So, and that ranges from the prison break-esque border run by the three Victorian teams to another week of unpredictable results in Project Restart. We've got all of that covered for you this week, so looking forward to getting into it with you. On board the MTAG train this week are Colby and Damo. Daddy Damo, how's your week been with young Percy, mate?
It's been good. I'm a bit tired, but it's to be expected, I guess.
Is that because of all the football you've been watching or because of Percy?
Yeah, that's the only reason. There's football on every night.
Damo, we need Percy on the pod. We need guests. It's all about guests, you know?
It's all about guests. Unfortunately, the young man's asleep right now, so we can't do much.
Disappointed.
Maybe
the fans are going to be up in arms.
I thought the ladies' league will be very upset. And Colby, mate, your babies, your beloved sourdough loaves, how are they going in ISO 2.0?
They're good, mate. They're up on the bench just resting away quietly now. So both of our babies are sleeping.
Very good. You've just got to feed them at regular intervals as well, don't you? So
arguably more than a baby.
All right, boys. Well, look, let's get straight into it. What's caught your attention this week? Colby, you want to go first?
Yeah, my boy Lubmobile this week, boys. Our Mobile won the Danish Superliga with Midtjylland. It's the first league title of his career. He's won a few cups before, won the FFA Cup with Adelaide and won a cup comp with Midtjylland. But really good season for him. He was the club's top goal scorer and made 35 appearances in all comps. So big things ahead for Lubmobile.
I think that's off the back of 2 seasons he was relegated in a row as well. So that's a huge jump.
Yeah,
Jeez.
Massive.
I'm just impressed of how you've actually figured out how to pronounce that club's name. I've always seen it just on bloody how do you say that even?
I was quite impressed by that Les Murray pronunciation guide.
Let's put a bit of mayo on it, boys. That's all you need.
Oof, delicious. Damo, what about you, mate?
I mean, it's hard to go past my moment of the week in terms of having a child, but I think the other moment of the week is
Sheffield United last week, actually. So.
Technically, well, Sheffield United still haven't lost a game since he was born, so he's a good luck charm. So we'll keep putting him in his little Chris Wilder outfit, and hopefully Sheffield United can keep getting some points.
Very good. Well, boys, I got a couple of moments of the week, and I'm kind of surprised that neither of you picked up on them. The first one was La Liga banning gambling sponsors from shirts from next season. I thought, Colby, you might have been right around that one, but
well, I was the first to notify the group chat, Tommie, so I'm glad you brought that up. Break used to the group chat, but you can have that one.
Thanks, mate. Look, there's a little bit to unpack with that, I guess, and it's not just, I guess, La Liga taking, I guess, a lone stance on this. This is really being led by the Spanish government, and they've made a decree that you can only advertise for gambling companies between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. in the morning, which that's pretty much
like the sex ads and gambling.
But that's pretty much like gamblers' prime hours as well. So it's probably not any change for them.
Yeah, they're not missing out on their target audience.
Yeah. My other one though, that I wanted to cover was AC Milan hooking up with Rock Nation. Now, I've got to admit, I didn't know a hell of a lot about this until I started researching it because I thought, what does this actually mean? And so Rock Nation, I felt really white and really lame, really nerdy that I had to research all of this. But basically, it's like a stable of musicians and sports people, which includes Lukaku, De Bruyne, Rashford, Axel Witsel, LaMelo Ball, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, Rihanna, Jay-Z, Shakira, DJ Khaled, Britney Spears, and Mariah Carey. So you kind of get the picture of the sort of vibe that they're going for here, and the people that fall into that stable. Rock Nation also do a whole bunch of work with the NFL in terms of working on their game day experience for fans. And I'm not 100% certain that they're a perfect fit for AC Milan, but it's going to be interesting to see just what they do with it. Never having been to an AC Milan game, I'm not really sure that I'll be able to notice much of a difference, but it's still pretty exciting anyway. But I've got a follow-up question about this. Do you think the A-League could get Rock Nation in to help with their game day experience?
It'd be like playing the music at corners and free kicks and that whole thing that was, suggested last season, Big Bash style. It'd be horrible.
Yeah, it'd be the budget version for sure. You'd have like Joey C at halftime with like a half and half strip, and it'd just produce content though. So I'm all for it.
A part of me wonders if Melbourne City have already had Rock Nation come in, because there was a period, I think it was last season or the season before, where like pre-game they would play this loop from Kanye's Black Skinhead, and like it was a really bizarre like mix of the two. Like you wouldn't think of Kanye's Black Skinhead as being like the most sort of family friendly like sort of tune, and every so often I think, oh geez, the sing's about to sing, the rapping's about to kick in at any moment, but it just never does. Anyway, boys' own goals, apart from me just taking over the pod with my moments of the week, have you got any other own goals to talk about?
I want to give my own goal to IFAB this week, boys, the International Football Association Board, who set up a lot of the, who sort of set up a lot of the rules of the game internationally. They're set to extend the 5 sub rule into 2021. And then this was brought in the COVID like Project Restart in order to protect players who were coming back after having a restart, and squads that might have players in and out and be a bit stretched. But stretching it into next season, when presumably everyone's going to be back to some semblance of normality, is going to be just a huge advantage to big clubs. And with clubs like Sheffield and Burnley, I mean Sheffield are doing well obviously, but like some of these clubs struggle to name a bench week to week, and it's just going to give such a huge advantage to the big 5 clubs. I mean, maybe the middle sort of tier of Wolves and the like, it might advantage them in fixture congestion, but it's a bit of a worry.
We haven't really seen that 5 substitutions rule really be exploited to its fullest extent, I think, during the post-lockdown, I guess. But it'd be interesting to see how in a year's time, whether or not it does change the strategies of a lot of managers, so that like they're saying to some player, all right, go run your guts out for 45 minutes, knowing that you're going to be out there for a maximum of 60 minutes. And if you're only if you can do that with like 5 players and playing your substitutions that way, and you've got quality coming off the bench with five amazing like world-class subs coming on, obviously, like you say, it's a pretty massive advantage compared to some teams that are struggling just to put out a good 11.
Lee Broxham Facts actually had a question for us, boys, on Twitter. He wants to know how long until we see a club do a quintuple sub, and will it be Jose Mourinho?
I reckon it's got to be Jose. I don't think anyone else would do it, but what I want to see is I want to see Jose do it in the first half.
Yeah. I don't think Spurs have got the depth to make 4 changes at once at the moment.
I mean, how many times can you sub Eric Dyer? I just don't know.
You'd think he would have subbed himself by now, like just to say, yeah, all right, if I'm starting Eric Dyer, maybe I'm the problem. But anyway, maybe that's a conversation for another day. Damo, what about you, mate?
My own goal this week was, I guess it could be a moment of the week in the way in celebrating his career, but my own goal, and we'll talk about this later, was Mile Jedinak retiring, because I'm disappointed he wasn't signing for an A-League club. So that's my own goal, is that he decided to stay in England with his family, which obviously you can't, disgruntle him for that, but I would have loved to have seen him back in the A-League.
It is sometimes a little bit of an anticlimax when you have the likes of Jedinak, and they don't really get, I guess, to have sort of a coming home or a sort of a final victory lap, I guess. But I mean, in some ways, you can't blame him really either, though. Like you saw the likes of Lucas Neal and Cahill and Kuehl sort of come home to Australia, and it sort of took a bit of the shine off of their legacy or people's memories of those players. And I can see both sides of the coin here.
We saw all the stats going around on social media today, boys. Like he's 79 caps for the Blues, 20 goals. He played at 3 World Cups, scored at 2. Obviously a Palace legend. He was treated a bit poorly by Pardew towards the end, and I was surprised to learn that he actually played over 70 games for Villa as well. And I think part of the reason why he is staying put in the UK is because he's got a coaching gig at their youth academy. But do you boys have any favourite Jedinak moments?
One that stands out for me was the Honduras final qualifier when Colby, I think we were at that game. Yeah, and like I mean,
I was there as well.
Oh no, we're all there, friends.
Were you?
I didn't know Damo at that point, so anyway. Other than that, it would have been the his penalty against the Netherlands. Obviously, that was a pretty big moment where I think he was captain and only just become captain at that point. And so it was a lot of responsibility. And I think smaller players would have folded in that moment and not been able to take that decisive penalty or not taking it as well. But that was a pretty special moment, one that I'll remember.
What about his penalty against Denmark in Russia? We went 1-0 down in that game, and then we got the pen, and Kasper Schmeichel was just getting in his face and giving it to him large, and then he just sends the bloke to the shops, and the crowd goes wild. So
just stone cold.
I think it's funny that we've spoken about 4 moments in his career, and they're all set pieces.
Yeah.
Set pieces and a hattie. The man only scores big goals. He only scores big goals.
Well, I think it's the hallmark of a player who plays in more of a defensive role that we don't have any things of note to say, oh, he fucked up here big time. So, he was always just such a solid player, and I think that's how you would describe his career.
Boys, during the week, there was a bit of chatter on soccer Twitter about Tim Cahill and sort of his legacy and why people do and don't like him. But if there's one constant about...
Are we doing a controversial Cahill moment?
No, a controversial...
We're going to get so many views, boys.
No, what I was going to say was that if there's one constant about Jedinak, it's that he's always dignified and he always puts sort of the right foot forward. There's never any controversy about him. It's always just professional and about the football and just no nonsense. And like from that perspective, he's very well respected, I think, in the Australian football community. And I think sort of in a similar way to how Viduka was just sort of no nonsense as well off the field. Like I think he will be remembered in the same way.
We've got a question before we get off the topic, boys, as well, from Mikey Mifsud. And I think you alluded to this, Damo. Disappointing that he won't be the sort of one of the marquees for MacArthur Bulls. Who else would you like to see now that he's sort of off the table, sign up as a marquee to the Bulls? Do you have any names there?
I don't know. It's kind of hard. I think you guys were speaking about it last week on the pod about if they bring all these players in they've spoken about, are they going to be any good? But I actually haven't heard many rumors of international players or marquee players. All the names that we're talking about, like you guys said last week, are young guys from other clubs. I guess it's kind of good in a way that there's no eyes on who the big names and experienced names are going to be, that they can sign anyone. There's no expectation that they're going to bring in a superstar, but I would have an expectation as a fan that they're going to bring in people that are just going to glue the team together. So I don't have any single out any names that I would like to see there. I would just like to see more of a mold of someone like a Broish or, that would come in and you can build a club around rather than a big name.
Yeah, I mean, Jedinak would have been so perfect for them, though, obviously being a Sydney boy and, much loved, like a final sort of hurrah in Australia as well. It would have been a great signing for them, but unfortunately wasn't to be. Hopefully, if Milicic confirms that he's going to be the coach, he's got someone in his network that he can, put in a similar mould.
Maybe we can bring Josip Skoko out of retirement.
Boys, he's not Australian, but Salomon Kalou of Chelsea fame, he signed for Botafogo in Brazil during the week.
With Kasuke.
Yeah, exactly. Do you reckon he's a player that you would like to see in the A-League, like right now, or
he'd light it up 6 months? Right now, absolutely.
How old is he now? He'd be in his early 30s now, surely.
Oh, I think he'd be older than that, wouldn't he? He's been around for a long time.
I feel like he was a kind of like Nani in a way. He came on the scene when he was like 18 or 19 in the Premier League, and then he was washed up by 24, and he's just been getting like shuffled around clubs ever since.
Yep.
Yeah, put some respect on Tommie Orr, boys. Can you believe the man's only 28?
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
That cannot be legit.
It's true.
Oh dear. All right, boys. Next up, let's hook into the Premier League. So where are we? So once again, another interesting week in the Premier League with plenty of teams having played 2 matches since the last pod. We're going to focus first up on the top 4 on the European spot race. And then we'll get into the relegation scrap and some of the matches around that. First up, earlier in the week, Chelsea took 3 points away from a stubborn Palace, and Leicester dropped points away at Arsenal. City, unsurprisingly, tonked both Newcastle and Brighton, while Manchester United travelled to Aston Villa in a match that had implications at both ends of the table. Boys, Man United ran out 3-0 victors over Villa with goals from Fernandes, Greenwood and Pogba. This was a pretty comprehensive performance by Man United. Is this a sign that Man United are back to their Fergie-era best?
I think that Man United were expected to win this run of games. You know, on paper, they should have dominantly won these games. But I think, to answer your question, they are back in a rare patch of form. I think they're the first team in Premier League history to win 5 games in a row by more than 3 goals. So you can't deny that they're playing good football.
But arguably, this has been games that they've struggled with a little bit over the last couple of years, right? Like
struggled to get up for.
Yeah, exactly. And Solskjaer seems to have had them humming against the likes of City. They've done the double over them this season. And so the fact that they were able to like quite easily swat away some of these sort of mid to lower table teams means that like they're back to, I guess, where a lot of Man United fans would expect them to be.
I think the real mark of how well United are going to do is how they finish the season. You know, where they land in the sort of top 4 race, and you know they're still in the semi-finals of the FA Cup. You know, they're hoping they should proceed through the quarterfinals of Europa League. So I mean, you know, if they can get a trophy and get into the top 4, I mean, you know, given how they started the season and how they were going early on, I think you'd probably have to say that's a pretty successful season. But are they back by their own standard and sort of lofty standards? To say not quite yet.
Well, it's funny you say that about where they'll finish up. I mean, even just if assuming that they beat Southampton, they can, and assuming Leicester drop points, they can leapfrog up to 3rd, which, like even a couple of weeks ago, it was sort of wild to think of Man United, whether or not they would make like sort of a top 4 spot. And now they could end up finishing the season in 3rd place if they keep up this run of form and the other teams around them continue to drop points. So yeah, look, Man United were also given a controversial penalty after Bruno Fernandes was adjudged to have been fouled despite also possibly fouling the Villa player in question. Boys, what do you think of this one? Do you think it's a penalty? Do you think it's a foul for Villa? Or do you think it's just play on?
Sorry, Damo, I'm going to go first again. This was an absolute farce. Ezri Konsa's just got his foot on the ground and Bruno just backs into him. I'm calling Bruno Fries and Coke from now on because he just makes a meal of it. Just makes everything into a meal.
Fries and Coke, I love it.
Oh, God. Look, I'm going to take a very diplomatic approach like a colour commentator and just say it was just coming together. You know, it just happens in football.
Wow. I think I've actually done something quite similar to this before where like you try to spin on the ball and absolutely just like sort of running into another player.
This is how you both play in futsal, boys. Both of you are back to the opposition, look for a dive.
And I remember like I did it and I got up and was like, oh shit, I'm so sorry. Not where's my penalty, please?
Yeah.
And obviously United, you know, one of the most, if not, I think they are the most penalty awarded team in the Premier League. To put it into perspective, I've got a stat here. This season, United have been awarded 18 penalties. Arsenal have been awarded 17 penalties in the last 6 years.
I think that's just indicative that Arsenal don't spend enough time in the front third, though.
Not true, because the follow-up stat, I was reading a thread about this, and Arsenal have had more entries into the penalty box than United over that same period as well, like by like 100 or some order of magnitude. I was reading this argument. If these stats are to be believed, boys, it's incredible, and that's only a comparison to another top 6 team. I mean, it's just incredible how many penalties United win.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy, but I mean, the stat we all want to know, Colby, is what's their XG?
Well, I was going to say, is there an
I've got some
expected penalty
XG chat,
stat?
boys. Our good friend JC on Twitter has just been flooding our timeline with XG chat, and it primarily revolves around Mason Greenwood, who I guess we can talk about. But apparently he's outperforming his XG by 211%. And if you want to know what XG is, because I always need to remind myself, you can also go to our mate Shabab Hossein, who also has a particular fondness for XG. And basically, it's the percentage of any shot being scored, accounting for their position, defender's position, etc. So, like, for example, Bruno Fernandes, I don't have the stat in front of me, but he probably doesn't have a high XG because he's always taking pot shots from outside the box. But Mason Greenwood is just like margins above Messi in terms of outperforming his XG at the moment.
XG sounds like it should be the new Toyota Corolla model.
The small car that's all car.
Boys, I was about to ask a question about Mason Greenwood, and you've jumped right in, which is good. He continues his excellent form this season despite having limited starts. He's one of a burgeoning crop of young English attacking players. Where do you guys rate him amongst other prospects, the likes of Mason Mount, Jadon Sancho, Saka, Foden, Hudson-Odoi?
It's kind of hard to conceptualize English talent because every 3 or 4 years there's a new crop of young English talent that are blowing the world, that are blowing the league on fire, and they all kind of fizzle out within a few years, and there's only 1 or 2 of them left. So it's kind of hard to look at them and say, oh, they're all going to be superstars, because we've been doing that for 15 years and we get 1 or 2 superstars out of the whole lot. So in comparison to that crop of players you're talking about, though, I think he is one of the best of them, purely just based on his performances. And like watching him play, he's such a comfortable player for 18 years old. He can go left, right. He's got it all in his locker.
He's genuinely both sided. He's not like just left foot or right foot.
It reminds me of that. Do you remember the interview with Ousmane Dembele? Where he said interviewer asked him, "Oh, you took the penalty with your right foot?" He says, "Yeah, why? I'm right-footed." He goes, "But you take corners with your left foot." He goes, "Yeah, because my left foot's better." And everyone was so confused.
The best story I ever heard about like someone being right-footed or left-footed. There was a bloke we used to play Sunday League with who was pretty two-footed as well, and he was saying like growing up he was right-footed, but then he learned to kick on both feet because his friend was left-footed, and he thought his friend was like going to get a girlfriend faster than him, so he taught himself to kick with his left foot because he wanted to get a girlfriend.
How did that go for him?
It went well. He got a girlfriend and he could kick with his left foot.
Tommy's a bit two-footed as well, but that's tackling, not passing.
I was going to go there, but mate, you went there first. Alrighty. Elsewhere, Sheffield United hosted Wolves and Chelsea in a defining week for the Blades in the post-restart phase of the season. First up, Daddy Damo. The Blades were in a mixed run of form leading into this week, but what went right for Sheffield United against Wolves in the back three derby?
Well, I think it was exactly that. It's the first game since the return of the Premier League that Sheffield United have had their full-strength back line, including with Egan, Basham, and Jack O'Connell in the middle and Henderson in goal. Obviously, the 2 wing backs as well. But it was the first time that they've all played together, which just completely solidifies the team. And it was the same against Chelsea. It's really difficult to break them down. They understand the way each other play, and I think that was just the foundation of the return of form.
Fair enough. So also overnight, and you've kind of already like alluded to this as well, but Chelsea had the Blues as the Blades looked particularly sharp in the second of their key matchups of the week. Goals from David McGoldrick bookended Ollie McBurney's well-worked team goal. I don't know if you guys call that one, but that Ollie McBurney goal I really enjoyed.
Yeah, the McBurney one was a great goal.
I don't think anyone would have expected this game to pan out the way that it did, with Chelsea folding like a veteran origami master and the Blades taking full advantage. Damo, in the lead up to this match, were you confident of the Blades getting a result against Chelsea? Or
I was pretty confident that we'd be able to keep a clean sheet, but I was worried that I was going to be up until 5 o'clock in the morning to watch a 0-0 draw. So
this game was never going to be 0-0 with Chelsea's defence, though.
Yeah, well, but you never know. It's kind of. I thought it was going to be a lot like the Wolves game, to be honest, is what I envisioned the game was going to be like. It was kind of an arm wrestle, but Chelsea did what Chelsea have been doing, and they kind of fell apart at the back in patches.
Damo, what's going on with McGoldrick's celebrations? He didn't have 2 up his sleeve, did he? He didn't expect to be scoring 1 goal, let alone 2. He's just gone for the strong arms.
That's his signature celebration, the double cobra. He's been doing that for a while now. He was doing it all last season, and I think he scored something like 6 goals in 3 games for Ireland or something in the most recent internationals, and he's got the double cobras out every time. So
it's a no nonsense centre forward, no nonsense celebration.
It's taken him a while to score in the Premier League. I think the stat was it took him 40. Before last night, he had 42 shots and 0 goals, and last night he had 2 shots and 2 goals. So he's back.
Back.
Indeed. Colby, you're going to have to be our stand-in Chelsea guy this week, so you can answer this one. Poor Tharkai. I think I don't know how you say it. I don't know if that's like an inside joke or something, but he asks on Twitter, Chelsea are on track to finish with a worse off points total this season than last under Sarri. Is Lampard the right man for Chelsea? And why is he allowed to learn on the job at a top 6 team simply because he's a Chelsea guy?
I'll do my best to be a stand-in George this week, and I will defend Frank, as I think George would probably want me to. I did a little bit of research on this, and Sarri, yes, did finish in 3rd with 72 points, and obviously won the Europa League. Frank's currently in 3rd still on 60 points and 0 trophies. But what I would say in his defence is he's had no Eden Hazard, their best player by a mile. Yes, most of the squad's the same, but he's had to regenerate the squad and withstand a transfer ban as well. Hasn't been able to bring anyone in of his own. He's had to deal with someone else's squad. And let's not forget, they're still in the FA Cup as well, that semi-final against United coming up. And they're also still in the Champions League. Yes, 3-0 down against Bayern, but, we've seen 3-0 deficits be overturned in the Champions League before. So, don't count Frank out too early just yet. Let's just see how he finishes the season.
Yeah, and I'd agree with that because I think he's building something different that Chelsea haven't built in a long time in terms of it's kind of been forced upon him to bring a lot of young players through and academy players and young English players. But he has done that and he's done it quite successfully. So I think that's why they're sticking with him.
So did they need to have Lampard there to be able to bring in young players though? Couldn't a more experienced manager or a previously more successful manager do the same thing?
I think it was the right time to bring in Lampard, given the transfer ban, and I mean even now, it's proving to be even more of a good decision. Coincidentally, just because of the state of the global economy and COVID-19, it's not a huge well pedigreed international manager name. It's just an English manager doing the best he can with a lot of young English talent, and obviously other talent that they have at their disposal as well.
So my biggest gripe with this whole Lampard and his inexperience as a manager is only to do with a preseason managerial power rankings that the Bleacher Report put out that had Frank Lampard above Chris Wilder in the power rankings of Premier League managers. So this was a manager whose complete history was taking Derby from 6th to 6th, and Chris Wilder had been promoted 5 times in 6 years. So.
And let's not forget what you said about Chris Wilder in the preseason, Damo.
It's going to surprise everyone. He's the Guardiola.
Future England manager.
Boys, you kind of alluded this a little bit to this earlier on, Damo. I think it was you about how they folded a little bit. Chelsea. Do you think there's a bit of a problem with the mentality at Chelsea, or some of the senior players just not having the gumption to kick on with a game, or?
I think more than anything, particularly the last few games, last night especially, was the back line at Chelsea and the midfield as well. There's just no physicality. And I'm pretty sure Lampard has alluded to this as well, that they're small or short or whatever. But it's not to do with that. It's just, there's no physicality in the way they play football. They're all ball-playing players that avoid a tough challenge in a hard graft. And Chris Wilder completely took advantage of that by starting McGoldrick and McBurney, who are two just dogged attackers. And they just ran riot on Chelsea's back four. And Lampard did try, and he brought on Rudiger at halftime and changed and put an extra player at the back just to try and deal with that. But even then, Rudiger's of the same mold. He's another ball-playing centre-half that doesn't it kind of shirks a tough challenge.
At least he's a little bit more experienced.
Sheffield as well. Tactical shift was completely forced by Sheffield. It was Frank trying to adapt to Sheffield's three at the back formation, and Frank was completely yes, he changed, and that's great for a manager to recognise that and to do that. But that's such a huge credit to Sheffield, making someone else adapt to the way you're playing your football. They're having to change the way they're playing to adapt how you're playing, and that's what a big team normally does to a smaller team. So.
Well, arguably, a big team did do that to a small team in this case. I hope George enjoys that one. Look, at the other end of the table, though, Watford beat Norwich midweek to give themselves some breathing space between themselves and the relegation zone. It also meant that Norwich needed a win at home against West Ham in order to keep themselves alive in the Premier League. A West Ham side, and this was a West Ham side that was unable to take its chances against Burnley at home midweek, losing 1-0. Boys, Colby, did you catch the early kickoff last night?
I caught it this morning. That's even the early kickoffs are getting close to my bedtime these days, so I did catch it in the morning. Caught the Antonio show.
Bloody hell, mate! It was a 9:30 kickoff. I thought that would have been okay for you.
Yeah, but after half time, I just like getting sleepy. So I've got to catch all these games in the morning.
Making sourdough's hard work.
Well, I got a phone call from one of our friends at 2:48 saying I need to watch the Liverpool game, and I was expecting Liverpool to get tonked by Burnley, but it's a good thing I go to bed nice and early, phones off, and I don't get these kind of interruptions.
That was very kind of you to describe Johnny Stomo like that.
I also got a call from Stomo last night. That was good.
He was doing the ring around.
Oh, looking for a friend. Boys, well, look, I watched this game. No surprises. And look, it was a pretty weird game. I'm just glad I'm not a Norwich supporter watching that because, it would have made pretty grim watching, I think, for them.
And they're down now, aren't they?
They are. They're mathematically gone. So I'm not sure if you guys caught on Twitter the English Football League and the championships Twitter moderator just absolutely giving it to Norwich and reposting their stuff saying we're Premier League and saying you're not anymore and stuff like that. I thought that was pretty cheeky, but look, Norwich were pretty grim in this game, and if you can't pump yourself up for a game where your status in the division is up for grabs, then you probably don't deserve to. But obviously it was too little too late for them, and they really, I guess this was pretty emblematic of what Norwich have been like this season. They kept going forward, but they never looked, I guess, to really have any sort of careful build-up play. And in the end, it just meant that they gave away the ball too often. And really, all of West Ham's goals, I think, were actually pretty soft. There wasn't anything that West Ham really did that sort of tore them apart or did anything particularly special or anything like that. Michail Antonio obviously got 4 goals. He's the first West Ham player to score an away hat-trick for at least 25 years, which is pretty ridiculous. And then he's gone on scoring his 4th and joins a pretty elite club of players in the Premier League era alongside the likes of Kane and Salah, Defoe, Arshavin, who've scored 4 goals in a game. West Ham ultimately, I think, seemed pretty in control of this one, which is probably the ultimate insult to Norwich because, West Ham aren't exactly playing teams off the park at the moment. So, Damien, did you see this one?
Yeah, I did. I was flipping actually in between both this and the Watford game. But I think up until the first goal went in, Norwich were, they were in the game and they were playing quite well. But as soon as they conceded that goal, it's like the players just went, all right, well, it was good while it lasted. We're relegated. And the rest of the game, they just kind of let it unfold as it was. And you could tell, like you saw, Cantwell didn't play. He came on with 10, 15 minutes to go. And he was standing on the sideline, like looking at the manager going, do I really have to go on? No, that's kind of what the players were like throughout the game. They didn't want to play.
I think all the viewers at home were probably looking at Cantwell and saying, "Please don't come on," because I haven't seen him recently, but Cantwell, for those who didn't catch it, was rocking cornrows, and oh my lord, like he probably shouldn't have been allowed on the pitch with that.
Can we just say a word about Norwich though? Now that they're down. Do we think they'll be straight back next year? Because I actually think that they're a good shot at going straight back up next year if they keep everything together. Which all their players are sort of young and just look like they need another year in the championship. And I've heard no rumblings that they'll get rid of Farker if they can keep that whole group of Cantwell. They're two very talented young fullbacks. They've got another talented young centre back, Cantwell, who I think I mentioned. I think they're very well placed to get a bunch of experience and come back better for it.
Well, this is my biggest gripe with Norwich is that they're a club that they're always too good for the championship but never good for the Premier League. And it's like they strive for anything better. They'll go down and they'll go, oh yeah, but we've got a good enough team to go back up. And when they go back up, they'll do the same thing again. They'll go, oh no.
At least you see your club win a trophy every couple of years though.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I really don't like Norwich as a club. I don't know where my hatred comes from.
They've got the Argentine monkey there as well.
Yeah, maybe it's the yellow. It's an off-putting color, I think.
It's not like the gold for the Socceroos jersey.
Yeah, it doesn't really work. Yellow and green.
Green and gold though. Whoa.
Boys, the relegation picture's starting to firm up now. It seems with Bournemouth remaining 2 wins behind Watford and West Ham, with Aston Villa a further point behind. Bournemouth have got to play Leicester, City, Southampton, and Everton, while Villa have got to play Palace, Everton, Arsenal, and West Ham on the final day. Look, do you think that that's pretty much the relegation race run for those two teams?
They go on. Yeah, they go on.
Yeah. Especially given the results last night, Watford and West Ham have kind of distanced themselves now.
It's they're at least 6 points clear from Bournemouth, and like I said, Villa are a further point behind that. So, yeah, Villa have got to win probably 3 games now at least out of those 4. So we're into the region of it being mathematically possible, but I think the 3 of us are in agreement that I think it's done now.
And similarly to the question you just asked Colby about Norwich going down. What I feel like Bournemouth, right? So they're a club that have been building something for so many years. Yeah. If they do go down, I mean, there's been rumors, I think COVID delayed it, but they were actually in the process of organizing a new stadium build that's going to be a 35 to 40,000 seat stadium. Is that going to happen now?
They're really making investments now. They're really making big investments in that club
Premier
now.
League money.
It's sort of like the worst time for them to go down. I really feel for Bournemouth because they're really starting to put money into their squad, into their infrastructure, and they're sort of at that critical juncture where, if they had another couple of years in the Premier League, that'd probably stick and they could be a sort of solid mid-table team for years to come. But now it's sort of like they've front-ended all the money that they've put into it, but they haven't yet seen the returns in terms of the infrastructure paying back or the players indeed developing and stuff either. So I'm really worried for Bournemouth.
And half their squad, unlike Norwich, who are likely to stay around and go again, more than half of Bournemouth's squad are what they would consider themselves as bona fide Premier League players and will look to go somewhere else. So
Callum Wilson, Brooksy, Harry Wilson obviously is on loan from Liverpool. All those. Ryan Fraser's already out the door. All
Nathan
their
Ake.
young. Ake, he's not gonna stick around and play. He's way too good for the championship.
So, like, I can only envision if Bournemouth go down, it's one of those situations where they go down, all this investment, they can't back it up with the championship funds. They could spiral out of control. And Howe will go.
Well, I think that's the key cog in all of this. Like, if they manage to hold on to Howe, I think they're a chance to at least steady in the championship. But if they lose him as well as like at least 5 or 6 of those key players that we just discussed, then I think they're in real trouble. And you've only got to look at like the bottom teams that are sort of circling the drain in the championship at the moment. And Stoke's one of them, right? Like it's really like the championship's not an easy league, even if you do hold on to some of those better players. So I think they're going to be really up against it next season. But that pretty much wraps up the Premier League. Next up, the A-League. So I was going to talk about Jedinak, but we've already crossed that bridge and we've already covered that. So next up, I thought the performance of the A-League this week in trying to deal with the just trying to get those 3 Melbourne teams up to Sydney was a bit of an apt analogy for, I guess, the A-League over the last couple of years, where they've tried, basically, they've struggled with basic tasks and basically tried to, things have looked far more difficult than what they really are. So before the impending lockdown, there were 3 teams that they were trying to get from Melbourne up to Sydney. And it served as another curious chapter in A-League history, as not once but twice, all 3 Melbourne-based A-League teams were unable to get to New South Wales before the season was due to start this coming Thursday. They were actually able to finally get up to Sydney come Saturday. And look, whilst the situation was pretty dynamic and there were a lot of moving parts in it and so on and so forth, but do you think the A-League should have done better and that Greg O'Rourke basically should step down, like, because of this? Or do you think it's just people like throwing pot shots when really it's like, it was, like I said, it was a very dynamic situation?
Yeah, for me, it's all a bit embarrassing, to be honest, because if you look at the way the AFL has dealt with it, originally wasn't great. The NRL have been brilliant with the way they've dealt with their return, and other Australian sporting leagues have dealt with this in a respectable way. And the A-League people kind of look at the A-League from the outside and laugh at it already, at the professionalism of the league. And this only adds to that argument that the A-League is a bit of a laughing stock sometimes. And it kind of feels
just embarrassing. It's embarrassing. I don't know whether Greg O'Rourke should lose his job for this, because by all other accounts, he's doing a great job under really tough circumstances. And it's a real transition period for the A-League at the moment, transitioning from the FFA to the leagues actually running the thing. And it's such a bad time for this to happen. It's never an ideal time, but. Let's not forget about the fog, boys. The fog really just got in the way of one of those attempts, and fog 1, FFA 0. Do you know, like, are there other times that you can think of, boys? I was doing a bit of thinking about this during the week, but other times where inclement weather has been the enemy of football. Got any others in mind? Because I've got a few examples where weather's got the better of football.
I've got a great one. So I actually made my senior team debut at a foggy day in Toowoomba in Queensland when I was 15, and I came on with 10 minutes to go, and I ran onto the wing on the opposite side of the field, and my parents didn't see me until I walked off at the end of the game. So my dad still doesn't believe that I actually played that day.
But I had a pretty similar circumstances when I was playing, like, what was it, under 14s or something, and we used to play on Wednesday nights down in Nowra, and it was pretty similar. Like the fog rolled in from sort of one the end, same end as one of the goals, and you couldn't see what was happening down the far end.
And of course, you've had other. Oh, mate, I've got a laundry list. I got a laundry list here, boys. But I'll read out a few favourites. Of course, you've got the Wind, Jurgen Klopp's arch nemesis, which caused the draw with Everton in 2019, and the cup loss to Wolves in the same year. You've had the rain that's caused a lot of havoc. You had that game in 2015 in the A-League, the Roar and the Knicks, that got called off after 17 minutes. and there was also that other famous Kazakhstan Premier League one where the ball's literally floating when they're trying to put it down for a corner.
I remember that like the back of my hand, that game.
The one of the snow classicos at Dick's Sporting Good Park in the US. There was a couple of them there, but the USMNT and Costa Rica in 2013 was a famous one. They had to, like, midway through the second half, they had to stop play to shovel the snow off the pitch to, like, get the lines back. And the altitude as well in Bolivia, sort of 12,000 feet, back in that 2009 qualifier where Bolivia just ran right over Argentina in that World Cup qualifier, was also a good one.
And the only reason that Stoke ever did any well in the Premier League was because it's always rainy and cold.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, wow. Boys, the three teams were finally able to get to Sydney on Saturday and get into camp, quite literally. Yep, that's because they're staying at Narrabeen Sport and Rec Camp. As if getting there wasn't enough to build some emotional resilience into the players and the coaching staff. They'll also be able to participate in some team building activities such as scavenger hunt, high ropes course, archery, kayaking and flying fox. It's enough to make grown adults cry just thinking about it, especially those with memories of attempting camps just like that. The remaining matches will be played in quick time over the next 4 weeks in what's being dubbed 27 in 28. But we're calling it a festival of football because 27 in 28 sounds shit. Except for day 9, the 29th of July, there will be an A-League game on every night for the next 28 days. So between the A-League, Premier League and Champions League, I'm pretty sure we're all going to need a well-earned break come mid-August.
I think our partners are going to need a well-earned break more than us.
Yeah, Ju didn't really seem to enjoy the West Ham game last night, so she's not in for a good run over the next few weeks. Look, onto the actual football, though, surrounding the A-League. Rather than breaking down each of the team's chances, I thought it'd be better if we picked out a couple of sort of key players, key teams that we think are going to go well or that we wanted to discuss. So, Colby, you want to go first. Have you got a team that you think is going to be coming home with a wet sail into the finals over the next 4 weeks?
Yeah, I actually think the Knicks will go quite well. They've got their whole squad back, including Hooper and Ulysses Davila. They've completed their quarantine like last week, and they've all been training together in Sydney. With probably, I don't know if they're going to be playing in front of crowds or not. Maybe not. But, there's certainly going to be no like big heaving home ground advantages to any of the teams there. And Nick's already had a decent record on the road. And they're definitely going to have a leg up against some of the other teams from Vic who are going to have to complete their quarantine and really be behind the 8 ball in terms of getting conditioned and all sort of training together. So, yeah, I think the Knicks could come back quite strong.
Damo, what about you, mate?
Well, to be honest, before earlier this week when you sent me a couple of questions to research the A-League, I had put it somewhere in the back of my brain and couldn't remember anything about the A-League or any players. But in doing a little bit of reading about the league and trying to catch up and get ready for it, I think Perth, that everyone estimated would be a great side this year, it kind of didn't really live up to their potential at the start of the season. They were hitting a good run of form before all of the league had to stop. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them come out fresh. It's just a chance for them to mentally reset and forget about the poor performances they were having towards the start of the season. It's like starting a new season. But because on paper, Perth have got one of the best teams in the league, in my opinion. And
Drill Sergeant Popper, he's going to have him in good shape.
Yeah.
That's his thing.
Exactly.
I was thinking that they would be like the one team that is going to be fit. Like, I think there would be big question marks over just about every other team in the league. But Perth, that they've been doing like spin classes and stuff like all locked down and they're going to be fit. For me, I thought this one was pretty easy. I think you two have obviously avoided the low-hanging fruit, but I reckon Sydney are going to wrap up the title pretty quickly. Similar to Liverpool in the Premier League, they've pretty much got the A-League Premiership wrapped up, and they only need to win 2 of their final 6 matches to secure the title. If it's not Sydney, though, I think Melbourne City, I think they're going to finish really strong. They've got the best facilities in the country, so the players don't really have any excuses. They also haven't lost any players over the break to returning home, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see J-Mako Ponga over their final 3 matches. And it's also a good opportunity for us to shoehorn a little bit of Monbear chat as well while we're at it. Mikey Mifsut, he wants us to bring up about Monbear's fashion sense. And I think, Colby, I think it might have been you that picked out Monbear's, that photo of him on the tarmac with the hat, rocking that black hat that looked a bit like the Undertaker.
Mate, that Undertaker comparison deserved more love. I tell you what, like when I saw that, it just had to go out. But yeah, mate, the man's an icon. The man's an absolute icon. There was all this chat about Babel, all this frothing over Babel when he was in the league. Because he wore a sweater or something or a hat, and like Monbirds. I mean, give the man some respect.
Here. What I want to see Melbourne City do is, assuming Monbear is still around next season, and we've got fans at games, is I want to see them handing out hats like they were handing out glasses earlier on in the season. I think that'd be wild. Just imagine all the kids with like black eyeshadow rocking up and doing their best Undertaker impersonations as well.
I mean, it's all the A-League needs is another gimmick that managers now try and outdress each other with like ridiculous outfits. That's what I'd like to see come of this. Monbert's on the sideline looking like the Undertaker. I want Popovich dressing like Kane.
Like you think soccer Twitter and Australian football fans are looking forward to it. Like who's looking forward to it more than Monberts? The man can layer.
He definitely came to the right city in Australia. That's for sure. All right, boys. Which team do you think is going to be really cold though over the restart period?
Oh, I think the VARC are going to struggle. Obviously, coming up from Melbourne, yeah, they had that big fuck around with the quarantine airport gate, and they've lost their captain. Ola Toivonen's obviously gone back home. It was like their top scorer and just such a big on-field presence for him. He brought all the attack in. It's sort of all centered around him. And yeah, they've had that interrupted. Restart now. So I think they might struggle, and they have no motivation of pretty much being able to get into finals. So they're basically just going to be blooding the kids and having one eye on next season. So I think they're going to struggle.
Yeah, Colby, I want to echo your thoughts completely. Like they've also lost their manager as well, Carlos Perez Salvatore, I think it is. He's gone to Belgium to work with Muscat, and curiously, Grant Brebner, I think you talked about this on a previous pod, but Grant Brebner has stepped in to fill the void there, the ex-Victory midfielder. Curiously, Brebner, I wouldn't be putting too many bets on the Victory for the remainder of the season after Brebner himself bet against the Victory once as a player when he was a non-playing substitute once. So he copped a pretty big fine for that one, but yeah.
How Scottish of him.
Damo, what about you, mate? Who do you think's going to sneak up the place?
I had said the Victory as well, just like you guys, but for argument's sake, I will also say Newcastle. I feel like Newcastle, they're on the back of a bad stretch of form, and much like Victory, they don't really have much to play for towards the back end of the season. They were already trying to reset and rebuild for the start of next year, and I feel like they'll be coming into the end of this season just like, can we get through it so we can get on to next year and we can start again? And
although, don't you think, Damo, that this might almost be a little bit of an advantage to Newcastle, because it's given the new manager a little bit of time to bed in, and he's brought in a few new players already. It's given them just that little bit extra time that they wouldn't have had mid-season to be able to sort of gel together and get something going.
Yeah, I guess you could sit on two sides of the fence of that. You could say it is an advantage that they've had the extra time, but is it a disadvantage that extra time's all been at home and the players actually haven't got to know each other and they haven't trained with each other? So you never really know. I mean, it's such a strange situation, but it'll be really interesting to watch because, I was watching, I think I said to you guys earlier, I was watching an MLS game yesterday and the teams felt so rusty to watch. And I was like, well, if this is an indicator of what the A-League's going to be like, it's going to be a slog watching 27 and 28.
Boys, I'm not sure if you guys have caught this, but recently the Jets' owner Martin Lee, I think he's struggling financially, and so the club are actually trying to find a new buyer at the moment. Laurie McKinnon, I think, is flogging the club all around Western Sydney to try and find a new buyer, which is I found that weird that the CEO is trying to find a buyer. I would have thought that would be something that the owner would do, but anyway. But the FFA and the A-League, they've obviously been quite upset with the club's owner Martin Lee. He's not putting any money into the club, and basically they've said, look, if you don't stump up some money soon, we'll just strip you of the license. So, look, it's how many times have we seen this, right? Where like an owner's having financial problems, and it feels like deja vu that we're seeing it again, where another club is struggling financially with their owner, and it's just really tiresome, I think, to some degree. But it's going to be another thing I think will be weighing on some of the minds of some of the players as the season wraps up for Newcastle as well. So, yeah, look, I agree. I think Newcastle, are going to struggle, and it could be a little bit ugly for them.
Tommie, if the Jets are anything like their English namesake, we could be toying with a takeover bid for the next 15 years.
God, wouldn't that be awful?
Like, I mean, honestly, who'd want to buy an A-League club? Like, they're, in a salary capped league, you're just pouring money into this thing that's never going to give you a return. Like, and then in this
especially
economic
at a time
environment
like
as
this,
well, with COVID, like, good luck trying to sell that to anyone.
Yep, no, totally agree. Boys, which player do you think is going to blow up though over the next month or so?
I don't really know. I think it's a chance for a couple of younger players possibly to stand up and step in. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head before, Tommie, when you're talking about Jamie McLaren. I think he's got something to prove towards the end of this season. Obviously, I assume, is trying to market himself to a club abroad for the start of next season. He's still in contention to start for the Socceroos. So he has got more to prove than a lot of other people in the A-League, and I feel like he has to come in and start scoring goals straight away. So I think he'll come in firing.
Fair enough. And Colby?
Yeah, this is super tough, Tommie, because we've had no visibility into any of the teams. But I'd like to, now that we've had a bit more time, I'd like to see a bit of Trent Bahagia at Sydney FC in any kind of shape, because if you remember in the preseason, he was going to be like one of their sort of standout players, and sort of light the league up this year. So I'm really interested, even just to get a look at him, and hopefully he'll get a bit of time after Sydney sort of wrap the league up, and before finals he'll get a bit of game time to try and get back into the team.
Fair enough. For me, look, Colby, you've already alluded to this player a little bit earlier, but I actually think Ulysses Davila, I think he's going to light up the league for the final couple of weeks. I think once they get Sydney and Glory out of the way first up, they've got some pretty tasty fixtures in their run-in with Adelaide, Wanderers, Brisbane, and Newcastle in their final 4 games. So I think he'll want to show that that early season form wasn't just a once-off, and I think we might see some special football from him over the remainder. So that's something to hopefully for us to look forward to. Boys, who do you think is possibly not going to do so well individually over the remainder of the season?
Can I just put a blanket over the whole league? How many registered A-League players are there?
You reckon everyone's just going to be super rusty?
Yeah, like I said just before, I watched the MLS earlier, and if that's any indicator of what the A-League is going to be like, I feel like it could be tough to watch at stages. But we watch the A-League for the stories and for the teams anyway, not the quality.
Colby, what about you, mate? You got anything more specific than that?
Oh, mate, maybe King Kenny Achu. I think he's going to get a lot of time, and he's going to be playing he's going to be playing in a victory team that are probably not going to be super motivated, other than sort of playing for pride. So, it's not a great time for him to shine.
Fair enough. All right, boys, let's move on then. Give me a storyline that you're particularly interested in the wrap up then.
I'll jump in here. I want to see the third Toure brother make his debut. I want to see all three. I want to see all three of them play for Adelaide in the same game in the A-League, which would be amazing. That's my story.
How old's the third one? Is he the 15-year-old or?
Yeah, I think he just turned 15 last month.
So that's Muhammad, isn't it?
Musa?
No.
Musa.
Jeez, it's been so long since I've even thought about the A-League. I'm forgetting who they all are.
the only Traore I'm thinking about is at Damo.
Yeah.
Which one?
Yeah, exactly. Not the Melbourne Victory one.
Colby, what about you, mate?
I think really the Knicks. I want them to push. Sydney got the premiership wrapped up, but anything can happen in finals. I really want to see them come here and do well, and really crack on. Go into next season strong. Keep the team together. Keep Ufuk-Talay there, because he's already been. Other clubs have been sniffing around. He's been linked with other clubs, just like Redan was in that first successful season at the Knicks. I'm really keen to see him finish really strong. Make a good tilt at finals and really just build something instead of having another restart at the start of another season.
Yeah, that's a good point, I guess. With Ante Milicic possibly hanging around with the Matildas, I guess there is a chance that the Bulls could try and poach Ufuk-Talay, which obviously would be terrible for the Knicks. So hopefully Ufuk-Talay hangs around at the Knicks and continues to build on what so far has been a pretty successful season for them. For me, though, what I'm going to be following is, I guess this is a pretty general one, but I'm following Adelaide to see how they go in that sort of post Gert Jan Verbeek era. So they've brought in Carl Viet in the last couple of weeks to replace Gert Jan Verbeek. And they've also lost left back Michael Maria, who has been probably one of the best players in the league this year to date for Adelaide. They've also lost Isaac Richards, who has gone to focus a little bit on his MMA career. You probably wouldn't know him by name just straight up, but you probably would have heard about him this week if you follow the A-League after he decided to leave Adelaide and go and do MMA, which, that's cool. Whatever floats your boat.
I did a bit of a research into this, Tommie. I am a bit of a MMA fan, and I tried to find any records of his. He has 0 amateur fights, 0 professional fights, and he has been doing kickboxing for 3 years, and he has 0 fights.
Wow. So good luck to him.
TikTok video on Adelaide United socials, boys, doing some kicks in training. So.
So wow. I don't know why you would walk away from a professional football contract to pursue getting punched in the face, but each to their own.
He said it helps him deal with his emotions. So, he sounds like probably most goalkeepers.
It's mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the three of us know one particular goalkeeper in mind who comes to mind. Boys, during the week when we were talking about this offline, we discussed how we've seen, I guess, some odd career changes come out of the A-League in the last couple of years. Obviously, we've got Isaac Richard, who's deciding to go get punched in the face for a living. We've also had Joey C, who's gone to the US and trying to carve out a hip hop career for himself. The other one that came to mind was Andrew Packer. He left, I think it was Brisbane Roar at the time, and this is, I think, probably season 2 or 3 of the A-League, and he went and joined the Army. And I dug through his LinkedIn profile a little bit through the week and found out that he ended up he left the Army, then he went to Newcastle as like a fitness coach, and he's doing. And now he's had another career change. So there's a man that just doesn't know where he wants to go with his life, but. Boys, do you have any other A-League players who come to mind? Do you think that could have maybe a career change?
Well, Jai Ingham, I think he had a forced career change when he was dropped from 3 different A-League clubs and not given a new contract. He took up an Instagram influencer model job.
Jeez.
There's one for you.
Not quite as...
I've got one, boys. Yongbin Chen from Adelaide United could be a lino, professional lino. He's been running the line for some of the club's games. I think it was like their academy games or something like that. He just basically set foot in the country, and they've got him on lino duties. So if he doesn't quite make it in Adelaide, he could be a lino. And Scott Neville's got a cafe, so I guess he could just run his cafe if it doesn't work out at the Raw as well.
Oh wow! The other one that I thought of as well was I think is Michael Turnbull, the ex Victory goalkeeper who went on to The Bachelor.
What about talking about goalkeepers? Andrew Redmayne should definitely not be a barber.
or a hair model. Yeah, wow, that was awful.
Also, speaking of goalkeepers, Jamie Young's he could be a migration agent, boys. He's currently the ambassador for a multicultural society in Queensland who sort of helps settle refugees and migrants in Queensland. So, once his football career is over, or even if he wants to mix it up a bit, he could get into the migration game. And he's also studying a Bachelor of Health. So the man's got options.
That could be an option as well, going into as like a migration agent or or having helping out people with resettling is Dean Bazanis. I know that he's obviously a fan of different sort of ethnic groups in Australia. So, yeah. No, you're looking at me both real blank.
So the only thing about Dean Bazanis I know is that his partner's a better footballer than he is.
Yep. I can relate to that though. Nothing wrong with that. All right, boys. Any others?
No, not off the top of my head.
That pretty much wraps things up then, listeners. Thanks for tuning in. There's obviously going to be plenty of football this week for us to dissect, plenty of stuff in the Premier League. We could have another relegated team or two relegated teams. The A-League obviously starts again on Thursday, and also Monday night we've got the Court for Arbitration in Sport is going to decide whether to uphold UEFA's decision about Manchester City's Champions League ban. Basically... we'll also be able to give you a rundown on how the Millennium Game Cup has gone. Listeners, if you're interested in joining in our Football Manager tournament on Friday night, check out our social media for more details. In the meantime, obviously, there's our Facebook, Instagram, email, which you can see below for those that are on YouTube. You got MTAG Podcast on Twitter, More Than a Game Podcast on Facebook, and mtagpodcast@gmail if you want to send us any emails as well. So thanks very much, listeners. It's been great having you. Until then, enjoy the football.